Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and for today's interview, I spend time with Sinuhe Xavier. Sinuhe's been a longtime personal friend. He's been on the podcast before, and it was one of our most popular episodes. So in this particular conversation, we talk about his new vehicle, which is a Chevrolet Bison AEV, and he's doing a bunch of cool modifications to that. We go into detail about his recent trips and adventures, including some into Central America, and we talk about what's next for Sinuhe. Sinuhe is an amazing creative. There's always these incredible insights that come from him in the podcasts. They're some of our most popular podcasts that we have for the show. So please enjoy my wide-ranging conversation with my great friend, Sinuhe Xavier. This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com. Sinuhe, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, so we've got the famous and infamous Sinuhe Xavier on the podcast. This is our second go-around. We had a great podcast with you a couple years ago, so it's nice to have you back. Always wonderful to see you. We always get into the appropriate amount of trouble together, which is awesome. So let's talk about some of your recent travels.
Yeah, I mean, since the last time we were together, I've done quite a bit, and I think if we were just to go back a little bit, one of the most recent was driving from Panama to Mexico in a 1968 Land Rover Series 2A. And, my good friend Miguel in Mexico City sent me this text, as he does often. And it says, hey, I just bought he sent me a picture, actually. It was a picture of this Land Rover in Colombia. He's like, hey, I just bought this. Do you want to drive to Mexico with me from Colombia? And I said yes, because I love a great, terrible idea. And this was probably July or August of 2021. And by February of 2022, he still hadn't gotten the truck, but he had it, but he hadn't gotten it.
Sure.
And he finally...
Did it need to be driven through part of Colombia, or was it just getting shipped?
He initially tried... I mean, you've got a Mexican dealing with Colombians, and I mean, it's a perfect analogy to our friendship, his Mexicanness dealing with my Colombianness. And it's like
cultural differences.
It's a cultural difference. I mean, it's just it's comedy.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, he finally flies down there to Medellin and drives it from Medellin to Cartagena to have it shipped from Cartagena to Panama.
Okay.
I couldn't do it for whatever reason. I think I was busy with the project, and he's texted me from the road. He's like, oh, this thing's amazing, it works great, like we're gonna have such a great trip. It's gonna be in Panama in 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, just let me know. And this is early on in 2022, and as those things go, there's some quagmires happen.
Sure.
Things don't exactly. I think it was supposed to be kind of an end of February, my birthday type of trip. Fast forward to early May, I fly to Mexico City to meet him, to fly to Panama to get the truck. and I'm hanging out in Mexico City, and he's this ball of stress. Just, like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it hasn't left Cartagena. They keep telling me they're putting it on the next boat. They're putting it on the next boat.
Sure.
And I'm just like, whatever. Like, these
Mexico
things happen.
City's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, Mexico City's a great place to be. The food's the best in the world. And
that's interesting. We have to dig into that.
Yeah. So I'm hanging out in Mexico City, and meanwhile, I have my friends are all, my California, LA friends. They're all going to Baja to race the Mexican 1000. And I'm like, Miguel, what's up with this car? Because I'm gonna fly to Baja real quick and race the Mexican 1000, and then we can go do this trip.
Sure.
And he's like, go do the Mexican. He's so frustrated with these people. He's like, go do the Mexican 1000. So I go do the Mexican 1000 and finish that, and then fly. By then, he has jumped through so many hoops. I can't imagine the stress that he's had, because he's literally flown to Panama City, taken a taxi out to the port town of, I can't remember what it is because I've never been there.
Yeah,
but it's the port town out on the East Coast, on the Caribbean of Panama. Picks up his car, and has to pay bribes and all this stuff. Like the port's on strike, but it's not on strike if you pay him money,
of course.
Like all the weird Panama stuff. So I fly.
And usually Panama's pretty good as far as Central American countries go on shipping. They're usually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean that's what that economy is, right? It's the Panama Canal.
It is, yeah.
So I fly down to Panama, and I get there at like 6 a.m, and I meet with Miguel, and I'm like, how's the car? He's like, so good, man. We're dialed. We had a few little things. There was a leak. It's at the mechanics right now, but we're dialed. I'm like, great. So I've got a full day in Panama City while they're finishing things up, and the next day we get on the road, and it's pouring rain. Like Central America, full on rain.
Sure.
And literally day one, it's just spewing coolant out of the back of the engine. Day one, hour 4. And
so you're barely out of metro.
Barely out. I mean, we were like
City.
3 hours out of Panama City.
Okay.
To the north.
All right.
You know?
Sure. And that's a good road. That's a really
it's a
easy
great
road
yeah.
to drive.
Pan American Highway. We're cruising along. And come to find out, after, being in the car with Miguel and actually being able to catch up on what was going on is, on those little series motors, they're in England and in Europe and North America, there was the back of the engine had about I'd say a 1-inch hole in it that was your heater.
Oh, sure.
Went to the heater core. Well, that in South America and the equatorial countries, they just plug that up with something.
Yeah, you didn't need it.
You didn't need it. You didn't need a heater. You
right.
So it just stayed plugged. Well, this plug had rotted to nothing and was spewing coolant out of it. And it was such that it was in the back of the engine. You had an inch maybe to get back there to actually see it, to stick your finger into this hole and go, oh, that's pretty serious.
Clearly where it's coming from.
Yeah, clearly where it's coming from. It's pretty serious hole that you can stick your finger in. And I mean, to the point where when it actually broke open, you could feel it against the firewall of the bulkhead of the Land Rover. So it's spewing. JB Weld, every type of thing. I think we had maybe the bottom of a soda can, covering it, whatever it took. But we get down the road, it's going. We figured it out in this little shop.
Right.
And the amazing thing about any developing country that I've ever been in is when you're a traveler, those guys are rooting for you.
They are.
They will drop anything to help you get back on the road.
Sure.
And not that these guys at the first shop that we stopped at had anything going on, but they were literally like, all right, we're going to figure this out and get you back on the road. You need to get going north.
Yeah.
I mean, what a novelty to see this 50-year-old car with a Mexican and a Colombian.
Totally.
Like terrible idea. Terrible idea. So we cruise north, and we make it that night to, you know, not as far as we had hoped, but we make it to this little, you know, we pull in, and it's these little cabanas that cost like $60 a night, and you know, it was amazing.
$60 a night?
But they were great.
Oh,
I mean,
okay,
they
gotcha.
were like
Gotcha.
first class. Like,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So like a little hotel room.
Yeah, like a little hotel room, but
Gotcha.
it was a cabana, you know, with a
gotcha.
pool, and
Oh,
we got
nice.
fed
Okay,
dinner,
I
you
gotcha.
know, like the full
All inclusive.
program. Yeah,
Gotcha.
it was amazing. The next morning we get on the road. It's you know, this foggy scene and jungle, and you know, I literally look over to Miguel and I go, dude, this is it. We're driving north on the Pan American Highway. Like, doesn't get any better than this. Like, how lucky are we?
Yeah.
You know, and we're cruising along, and then boosh, you could feel whatever we'd used to plug that hole hit the bulkhead, and just steam everywhere. And there we are on the side of the road, just dead, you know, and everything's wet.
Sure.
Because we're in a Land Rover and it had been raining.
Right.
And so I just get out and I start hanging my clothes up and everything that's wet. And I'm like, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
And so we get towed to David, which is a northern city in Panama.
Yeah, I've been there.
And
nice spot.
we get...
It's a little bit more resources there too.
Yeah, there's some more resources.
Town,
It's a decent town.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's not a small place. It's not big by any means.
Yeah.
There's nothing over 4 stories there.
Sure.
But we'd heard about a European mechanic there, a Czech guy. That's
Okay.
been in Panama for a while, and we get the car towed there, and the guy's just looking at it, and speaks perfect Spanish, so he and Miguel are going back and forth, and he's never worked on a Land Rover before, but how complicated could it be?
Sure.
You know, like it's a Land Rover, blah,
Sure.
blah, 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 blah. We end up within the span, and like I said, drops everything, you know, and the only thing in this shop, and I say it's a shop, it's literally a palapa.
Right.
You know, with a lift in it. And on this lift is a Range Rover Sport that is in a million pieces. Like, I'm familiar with Range Rovers, and I've never seen a Range Rover in this. Like, the monocoque shell was off of the tray on the bottom, and the engine was sideways with all the pieces off. And, you know, there's BMWs, but no old cars. But we take the engine out. We send the engine, like the engine disappears on the back of a truck.
Sure.
To go get it machined so that we could machine a plug and actually do it right.
Sure.
You know, so it's not going to corrode, that whole thing. And then it's just gone. And we're just hanging out at this shop with a pit bull on a chain. And, you know, we're just like, all right, how long is this going to take? Well, I don't know. It's at the shop. Can we check? No, they'll get to us. So a day goes by, and we're like, how long is this going to take?
Mañana.
When they get done,
Yeah.
mañana. When they get done, they'll get done. And we're just like, okay, like this is what we're doing. And I don't. It's such a blur. I think we were there 2 nights.
That's not too bad.
No, for pulling an engine.
Sure.
You know, the engine comes back, and we put it back in, and you know, Miguel had traveled with a spare clutch, a new clutch, and some other parts that he decided to put on, and
might as well do it while the engine's out.
Might as well do it while the engine's out, right? So we get the engine back in, and as soon as we try and drive, I'm like, dude, this clutch isn't right. There's something completely off with this clutch. He's like, I don't care, we're going. I'm like, all right. I mean, it drives, like we barely get into first gear, but let's go. Going north. And we just head north, and we get into
probably got into Nicaragua next. Yeah.
Well, Costa Rica.
Oh, Costa Rica. Sure.
Yeah. And we get to the Costa Rican border, and it is a quagmire like I've never seen. It's pouring rain. It's, you know, we can't. there's all these semi trucks that are like
Sure.
a mile back. And we walk up and we talk to the people at the window, and they're like, well, if you just, and they show on the map, if you just go up, you know, head east along the border, you're going to see an alleyway that gets you through. And we're like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, just go through, like, and then go to the Costa Rican side and they'll check you in. And go, but don't we need to check out? I'm like, it's Panama. And like, nobody cares. So we literally cross the border through this muddy alley, you know, and end up in Costa Rica and Pavones, and which is and it was really, really, like, Pavones is one of the longest surf breaks in the world.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not a surfer. I don't identify as a surfer. I don't get surfing, you know, like mahalo. But it was going off. And to be in this town and see the energy of the surfers and these people just so psyched about that wave was incredible.
That is incredible.
And, you know, the next day we get on the road, the truck's running great. It's torrential rain, like the kind of rain you read about. And, you know, I'm sitting there, Miguel's driving, and my windshield wiper just goes flying off. Like, it's gone.
The arm goes
the
flying.
full, like, thing is gone. It's just like, all right. So that's just how we've got one windshield wiper. It's cool. And we're cruising along, and then we'd filled up with gas, and then the truck just dies right on the highway on the inside of this turn. And Miguel's like, I'm gonna back up down to the bottom. I'm like, dude, we're not backing up anywhere. I'm just super safe guy, you know, like abnormally safe, but you know, there's trucks coming by and everything. And finally, you know, we get a tow again into I can't remember what town it was, but it was a terrible like super touristy,
right?
You know, everyone like trying to sell you a picture with the iguana, you know, type of place.
Sure.
And we're there, and it's like, all right, we need to figure out this car. Let's try and find a mechanic here that can figure it. Like, did we get bad gas? Do we need to drain the gas? What's the issue?
Yeah.
And you know, we had a mechanic come, and he's like, you know, your battery's good. Like, yeah, I don't know. I called my contact in San Jose, the capital, who was a very tied into the whole Land Rover world, you know.
Good guy to know.
Yeah, super good guy to know. Jose, and he was basically like, here's the shop. You need to get to this shop. He's a Land Rover guy. He'll take care of it. And I was like, you know, I'm not going to San Jose. I'm over this. You know, if you can get the car fixed in 2 days, cool. If not, I'm going today to San Jose or to Santa Teresa to my buddy's hotel, and I'm gonna hang out. Okay, you can fix the truck.
Land Rover.
Yeah, you can fix the Land Rover that was supposed to be fixed by the time we got on, and then you know if it's fixed in 2 days, we'll continue going north. If it's not fixed in 2 days, I'm flying home.
Sure.
You're like over the Land Rover that breaks down every day.
Sure.
He gets it fixed, and it's great. Like, and we get on the road, and we're cruising. You know, after 2 days, it was 2 days. I had a wonderful 2 days in Santa Teresa with my friends at House of Somos, and
you were ready to get back on the road.
I was ready to get back on the road. Like so I fly from Santa Teresa to Liberia, and we jump in the truck, and we're heading north to Nicaragua. We've got lots of time. It's super cool. Like, we're cruising. The truck's running great.
Nice.
Run the best it's been. We get to the Nicaragua border, and they're like, oh, you need a negative COVID test. And it's like, we go get the negative COVID test. It costs us an arm and a leg in Costa Rica because everything's expensive in Costa Rica. We get back to the border, get through, and then it's like, they're looking at our passports, and they're like, a Colombian and a Mexican. No joking, no, like, anything. It's, where's the drugs? Like, we don't have any drugs. Like, go through our stuff. No, where's it hiding in the truck? It's like, take the truck apart. It's a tin can. Yeah. You can't hide drugs anywhere.
Yeah.
And they're underneath it, like, knocking on stuff, patting it down. All our stuff's just flipped out of the truck. You know, it's getting dark. it's raining, and here we are at the Nicaraguan border, and they take it. They're like, well, we're going to go X-ray it. I'm like, go ahead, go X-ray it. Like there's nothing in this truck. Like you don't need to X-ray it.
Right.
There's no hidden panels.
Exactly.
They're like, well, it's in the frame. We know it's in the frame. Okay. Like, whatever. So they go, they X-ray it, and like, well, the X-ray doesn't show anything. We're going to have to drill holes in the frame. They drilled 8 holes in the frame, 4 on each side.
Wow.
With nothing, and at this point, it's almost midnight. We've been there since 6 p.m., at the border dealing with this. And they're about to close the
I've
border.
never heard of a frame being drilled at a border.
Oh, yeah.
This is the first time for that.
Oh, yeah. So it's midnight, and
that's clearly not the drug-running vehicle of choice.
No.
A classic Land
What,
Rover.
a classic Land Rover? Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's slow.
Yeah, exactly. There's no place to hide anything.
There's no place to hide anything. Yeah. So it's midnight, and they close the border at midnight. Like, you can't go on after midnight. And Miguel goes running in because he's got the stamps from all of our stuff. He goes running in, and the guy, like, pulls the blinds down. And then he brings them back up, gives us our stamp, and we're in to Nicaragua.
Yeah.
And
what a beautiful country.
Oh, Nicaragua was amazing.
The roads are
great.
Well, so they sound better than when I was there.
Yeah. Oh,
the roads were super rough. I remember one out of Leon it was probably the worst potholes I'd ever seen.
Really? No, the roads were great. We cruised through Nicaragua.
Nice.
Into El Salvador. Was it El Salvador? Oh, we had to go through Honduras.
Right. that one little corner.
That one little corner. And we had planned on getting to Honduras earlier, but we got into Honduras just about as the sun was going down. And we didn't want to spend the night in Honduras. We just wanted to get through it, get to El Salvador. And it's raining. Just take that, like the rest of this story, it's raining because it rained the entire time. But we get into Honduras and we're driving along, and we have like maybe another 2-3 hours in Honduras, and the headlights just go out.
They don't get dim. They just
go out. Lucas, the Prince of Darkness, is living up to his name. And we pull over on the side of the road, and we're in Honduras, and you've heard nothing but nightmares about Honduras, right?
That could be a challenge.
Dangerous place. It's all these things, blah, 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 blah. And we're on the side of the road with no lights in this truck, and, a Honduran stops, and, he's like, hey, can we help you? And we're like, we're not exactly sure what's going on. And he's got a flashlight, he's poking around in there, and he's like, oh, I don't know. And then Miguel's in the driver's seat, and he's flicking things around, and he did something, like one of those 1 up, 3 down.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers,
sure.
And the lights come on, and Miguel's like, okay, we've got lights, let's go.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what it was. We had lights, and we could
figure it out later.
Yeah, we'll figure it out later. And we get on the road, and we just go. And we make it into El Salvador. And El Salvador...
Because how far is it between those two? Because when I went through Honduras, I went through Tegucigalpa, and I came into Copan City in the north. So we took the long way through, but that little corner looks like it's fairly short.
It's super short.
50, 60 miles?
60, yeah, something like that.
Got it.
And the time suck is always the
crossing.
Crossing.
Yeah, sure.
Because especially Nicaragua. Coming in and out of Nicaragua was
a challenge. Huh?
It was absolute. I mean, the paperwork isn't right. It's your paperwork.
Yeah.
The guys on the other side did that. It's not us. And they're just super, super tough.
Yeah.
To deal with. Everywhere else, it was a breeze.
Nice.
Just super.
Oh, it's
super
good
easy.
to know.
Yeah. So coming out of Honduras into El Salvador, it's late at night. It's raining, but El Salvador was great, and I learned that El Salvador has more volcanoes than any other country, and it's one of the teeniest countries.
It is a small country.
Yeah, teeny country. And I drove all the way through El Salvador, and we had one stop before Guatemala, and that clutch had just wrecked me. I could barely walk by the time we got to Guatemala. My leg was
they're so heavy. Those clutches are so heavy.
But yeah, I mean, Guatemala, again, uneventful. I got to spend some great time with my family there. They live in Antigua and Guatemala City, and it was just wonderful. That was a great bookend to the trip.
Nice.
And it was one of those trips that, like, anything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. And we just, like, we got into, squabbles with each other as travelers do. But then there's that mutual respect that kept you going.
Yep.
And, it was one of the great trips of my life that was completely on pavement. And there was a few things that we did that were off pavement, but it was brutal in that truck. Holy
and that's the thing is overlanding, you can go around the world overlanding and not go off pavement, and you can still be overlanding.
Yeah.
I mean, if you cross all of Russia and you drive all the way, the length of the Pan American, most of it is paved. If you want, and you're having one hell of an overland adventure.
Yeah.
So,
and the fun thing about that trip is I've done it here in the U.S. a few times where I've bought a car, bought a motorcycle or something, and flown there, grabbed it, and driven back. And it's fun. You've
fun.
got this new thing that you don't know. You're trusting somebody that says it's great. And I've always wanted to do that internationally, and my friend Miguel did it.
Yeah.
And we pulled it off, and it was so much fun because, we just figured it out as we went.
Did you have any lessons, any takeaways from that?
I mean, I think at my stage, it's reinforcement of previous lessons.
Yeah.
Of just like, hey, it's not the end of the world. No one's hurt.
Right.
No one's life's in danger.
Right.
You just need to be patient, and things work themselves out.
Right.
And kind of that constant forward motion too, that I learned.
Keep moving through the obstacle.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's, I think I learned it in mountaineering, and something that a mentor of mine, Ace Cavalli, always says is constant forward motion. You just, no matter what, you just keep moving. Especially after you've reached the summit, because the summit's only halfway there.
Yeah.
So, it was that constant forward motion of not getting discouraged, because it's easy to just throw your hands up and go, the car's broken, we don't know what's wrong with it.
Right.
But let's keep pushing it forward. Let's keep moving,
And you had a heck of an adventure because of it.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing.
And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people that maybe even look down on a classic Land Rover for travel miss, is that it kind of guarantees adventure. And I don't know, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but for me, that's kind of what I signed up for. I wanted things to be difficult, and I wanted to learn about myself and to grow and to have challenges along the way. And if you drive what year was that?
It was a 67, 68.
If you drive a 67, series Land Rover, you're going to have one hell of an adventure, pretty much guaranteed.
100%. And, in much to Miguel's credit, he had all the right tools, all the right spare parts,
Nice.
As well as he could,
Sure.
without towing a totally separate truck.
Right.
So that, that makes it easier. That makes the adventure easier.
It really does.
It's part of the way I personally learned being out there and having these types of trips is be as prepared as you can be.
Right.
And, the breakdown, the getting stuck is part of it.
Right.
Our mutual friend Jack Quinlan really embraced that.
Yeah.
And I really learned from him to embrace that. Hey, this is part of the deal. And if we get into camp or the next town at 3 a.m., it's part of the deal.
It
but
is.
we had this time on the side of the road, like the time you got stuck in Colombia.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That was awesome. That was
had all
awesome.
the empanadas.
You did. Yeah.
I had all the empanadas.
The little empanada shop, like their kids are going to college now and everything else. Yeah, that was awesome. It was good.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there on the side of the road with a broken BMW and just waiting for you guys to come back.
But it's
talking to the locals. It was great.
Yeah, part of the thing.
It was
part of the deal.
Yeah, it kind of forces you to work through it.
Yeah,
which is really good.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, you've also recently you also did a trip with Camp Yoshi.
Yeah,
a couple of them actually.
Yeah,
so
we've done
let's talk a little bit about who they are and maybe a little bit about the adventure that you did.
Yeah, so Camp Yoshi and I it's two brothers, Ron and Rashad, and very different brothers.
Where does the Yoshi come from? Is it a last name, or what? Do you know what it means?
Yoshi, it's Japanese, and I forget exactly what it means, but it's something good.
Yeah.
But Ron and Rashad are brothers and very different backgrounds. Ron is in finance of some sort, and Rashad's a chef that was in finance at one point.
Nice.
And they started this travel company essentially to open the doors for people of color.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'd never really considered, generationally. Black folks didn't feel comfortable in the outdoors because it was a dangerous place for them.
Sure.
In the 40s, 50s, 60s, that was a very dangerous place for a black person to be.
Sure.
It was out in the middle of nowhere, and we've evolved and we've come to a new time, but generationally, the guys that are our age, their parents didn't take them camping.
Right.
And what Ron and Rashad want to do is they want to open the outdoors to them, show them that they're welcome there, show them that there's nothing to be afraid of, that it's
incredible benefits.
Yeah, there's incredible benefits to it. It's an incredible place to be. So they started Camp Yoshi, and I was introduced to them on their second or third trip, their first trip to Moab, essentially. And they wanted to, how do we do Moab right?
Right.
And what really impressed me about them was we don't know anything about camping in the desert, traveling through the desert.
Right.
How do we do it right with minimal impact? We want to teach our clients the right way to do this. And word on the street, and I can't remember how the word on the street got to them that I was the right person to ask.
Sure.
But, they reached out, and I ended up there, and we had an incredible, 4 or 5 days there. And I hooked them up with Nina Barlow, who taught them about driving and minimal impact.
Sure.
And I taught them about, minimal impact when you're camping, about wag bags, about, and these guys, I mean, when they heard about wag bags, you should have seen their faces. They were like, what?
We're going to do what?
You're going to do what?
Yeah.
But then, so there was that initial trip with them. And then I actually came back because I wanted to see how this was implemented with their clients.
Sure.
And when I went back on their first trip, it just really made me proud that here were the two guys, my two guys, that I taught the best that I knew how.
Sure.
And then they had, I think it was 12 clients, and then their 3 or 4 support staff.
Sure.
That they were, basically repeating almost verbatim about cryptobiotic soil, about how to travel through washes,
Sure.
about, sanitary issues.
Packing out your stuff.
Yeah, and then here were these 12 people that for their first camping trip, it was, I think, for those 12 people, 10 of them, it was their very first time camping.
Wow.
Definitely their first time in Moab. And then they were learning this very low impact way of traveling through the desert.
Sure.
So from that, they basically said, well, Sinuhe, how can we do something else? How do we go to, Canyonlands 301, the AP course, how do we get our masters? So we went out and we basically did, instead of a base camp type of thing that they did on their inaugural trip, we did more of a car camping overland trip where we went,
Nice.
Was it 3 or 4 days? But, we went out and explored with our friends from Huckberry as well.
Amazing.
And we went out and explored, okay, how could we put this trip together where it's a little spicy with some driving,
Right.
amazing topography. I really want to introduce them to the the ancient Pueblos that were there.
Sure.
Ancient Puebloans that were there previous to us. So they have a history. Like, this isn't, I think for me, and it comes back to how my perception of the area, as soon as I realized that the desert wasn't this wasteland and that it nurtured life for thousands of years, it made me really tweak my perspective on the Colorado Plateau.
And you've gone through that process over decades. And I mean, you've been traveling the Colorado Plateau for at least 20 years.
Well, having just turned 50, it's now 30 years.
Yeah, we both just turned 50.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my first time, I'd been mountain biking there quite a bit.
Sure.
You know, Bob Allen took me down there for the first time to mountain bike. But then my first time to really get deep was with Seldom Seen Smith.
Okay.
Of, you know, Ed Abbey history.
Wow.
And I'd been mountain biking up on Poison Spider, and this old Jeep, flat fender Jeep, comes creaking up behind me, and this guy just goes, "Out of my way, you sprocket head." You know, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like, whatever, get by, you know. And he cruises by, and a couple miles down the trail, he's in a nice shady spot, and he's got his, you know, igloo cooler with water out, and he's making a bologna and mayonnaise sandwich.
Sure.
And I ride up, and he goes, "Oh, you want a sandwich? You want some water?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." You know, shady spot, and I'll eat this. And we get to chatting, and you know, he finds out I'm from Montana, and he asked me about Doug Peacock. He goes, "Well, you must know Doug Peacock." I go, "Well, Doug Peacock, who, you know, in the book is Hey Duke."
Okay, gotcha.
And Doug Peacock was my creative writing professor.
Oh, wow.
Recently. And, you know, so I tell him this, and he's, you know, eyes light up. He's like, "Of course you know Doug." And he goes, "Well, you ever been down into Canyonlands?" And I go, "No, what's Canyonlands?" You know, and like, to me, Moab was it.
Sure.
You know, because that was mountain biking, and my world was Moab, and I was getting a little bit explory, getting, you know, out into Jackson Hole, which was towards Canyonlands, but not very deep. And he goes, "Oh, it's, you know, the Needles," and he's really excited. He's like, you gotta get down there. And he says, "Well, what are you doing the next couple of days?" I'm like, "Nothing. I'm living in my van in Moonflower Canyon."
Yeah, sure.
Let's go hang out. So I end up going down to the Needles District.
Oh, wow.
And we go up over Elephant Hill.
Oh, wow. In his Jeep.
In his Jeep.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in his Jeep, and we camped at, I think it's Devil's Kitchen.
Sure.
In there. I still remember it, like, you know, him telling me about the ringtail cats and to watch my food, and, you know, we didn't sleep in tents. We were just sleeping, you know, out in cowboy camp style.
Sure.
And that to me was the mind-blowing entrance into the Colorado Plateau.
And it recalibrated probably so many things.
Oh, yeah.
Of how little you need and how simple the vehicle can be and the setup can be, and just get out and explore.
100%. And it was, you know, it was the first time that I'd seen, you know, the ancient Pueblo homes and the ancient Pueblo writings, you know, pictographs and,
Wow.
and whatnot. And it just really blew my mind. It made me want to come back out here.
Yeah.
So with Camp Yoshi, I wanted to try and recreate that sense of wonder and astonishment with them
Sure.
first.
Sure.
And then let them recreate it with their clients. So we went out for 3 or 4 days, and we wrapped down through the Bears Ears, got pretty remote, you know. And I think that's an important part of teaching people how, you know, hey, we can be super remote where you're, you know, 70 miles in each direction if you're on the highway to the next gas station.
Sure.
But you're going to be all right, you
Yeah.
know.
Give people that confidence.
Yeah. So yeah, we put together a great route for them, and it's ancient Pueblo dwellings. It's, you know, pictographs. It's off road. It's on road. It's slot
Sure.
canyons. It's great. So and they're doing that this fall in October.
Yeah,
which
what
I
a
think
neat organization.
Yeah.
And we'll put link in the show notes to, Camp Yoshi. Camp Yoshi's doing amazing things. The Gathering event that you and I both went to recently, they're doing amazing things. Sonia and Dakota. Yeah, it's just awesome stuff that we're seeing happening. And then you did fly and do the Mexican 1000. So you got to talk about that a little bit, because that sounds, first of all, the vehicle you did it in is like everybody's dream Baja experience.
So, yeah, I mean, the Mexican 1000, it's not the Baja 1000. You know, a lot of people get Mexican 1000, Baja 1000 confused. Baja 1000, they do it in a day. It may be 36 hours, but you have to complete the full 1,000 miles in one shot. The Mexican 1000 is more of a rally.
Sure.
You know, you've
like
got
a classic car rally.
Classic car rally. You've got 5 days to make it from Ensenada to San Jose del Cabo. And I'd been aware of the Mexican 1000, hadn't really been interested in it. Early on in my career, I worked with Mouse McCoy, who'd won the Ironman.
I remember that. That was such a great story.
Dust to Glory, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah, great movie.
So it was kind of, you know, like my perception of the Baja 1000 and Mexican 1000 was very motorhead, like trophy trucks. You got to have millions of dollars to do this type of thing. And wasn't really on my radar. It's something that I was interested in doing. Early 2022, my buddy Tim sends me a message, and Tim's a great guy. I've known him for a long time. Actually knew him through the motorcycle world. And he sends me a message, and he goes, I just bought a Myers Manx. It doesn't have an engine. I'm going to race the Mexican 1000. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, well, it kind of depends on my schedule. A week's a long time. And at the time, it wasn't something that I wanted to do.
Sure.
You know, it wasn't a yes.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and that's the way I determine a lot of things. Either fuck yes, and if it's not a fuck yes, I'm out.
Right.
And
yeah, or otherwise it should be a no.
Yeah, exactly. And but it was interesting, and I loved him, and he does things right. He does things, so I was interested. But I had a lot of things going on, you know, and it kind of depended on
including this trip driving an old Land Rover.
Yeah, that was falling right in there. So when and I kept in touch with Tim as he's like, oh, I got an engine off Craigslist for the Manx. Like, oh my God, this is never gonna happen.
Right.
This is never gonna happen. And then my buddy Stefan got involved, and then my buddy Dustin got involved. And, you know, it started coming together, and I'm like, oh, this, you know, and I started getting a little bit of FOMO because I was going to Panama to do this thing. The Panama thing fell through at the time, and I end up in the Tijuana airport at 9 a.m., you know, drinking Tecate, eating huevos rancheros, waiting on my buddy Stefan to pick me up, you know, to go to Ensenada. Yeah. And it was awesome. You know, he pulled it off. He built this Myers Manx with a Volkswagen engine that he bought.
Is that what they had
Craigslist.
originally?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was I don't know if I'm using the right terminology because I'm not super familiar, but it's the Myers Manx is basically a fiberglass tub that sits on the Volkswagen Bug
kind of
trade
tub.
chassis.
Yeah, sure.
You know, because it doesn't have a chassis. It has
it's kind of a unibody.
It's kind of a it's one of the first unibodies. Yeah. So and it sits on that. So it has the little Volkswagen engine in the back, and you know, it's a it's the little dune buggy.
Sure.
You know, and we had such a good time. I mean, and that thing only goes 50, 60 miles an hour.
It's not that
at
fast,
best,
yeah, sure.
you know. But what the Mexican 1000 did was they hooked up with this guy Michael from Slow Baja, and I forget his last name.
I've heard about them.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He drives an old FJ40, you know, and they created the Safari class, and it's just this class that is all about vintage, all about cruising.
Sure.
You know, you're not racing. The trophy trucks are there.
Right.
And the big bikes, you know, the rally bikes are there, the big enduros are there.
Sure.
And all the things are there. But then in Safari class, you're just kind of cruising. Like you're just cruising along, having fun. You stop at the pits, you have some beers, you have some ceviche, you get a tamale from the lady down the road.
Perfect.
And you work your way down, the peninsula.
So it's kind of like you're racing to a degree because you're having some fun with a little bit of speed, but then you're experiencing the whole place.
You're experiencing the whole place, and it's not a race though; it's a rally.
Yeah.
And I think some people, there's definitely the people that take it more seriously than others.
Sure.
We weren't that.
Sure.
We were so stoked that we made it to the finish every day.
Sure.
And then it was getting it back to where you could start in the morning, figuring out why we were burning a quart of oil every half hour, that
Sure.
type of thing. But it was just super fun to the point where I was like, all right, I'm on board again for 2023,
And you're going to do it again.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
100%.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure we throw a couple photos of that into the show notes. Oh, that's so great.
Fun.
Well, I want to pivot a little bit, and because one of the things that so many people that listen to the podcast know you for is your creative work and the quality of the creative work that you do. Also, that you tie a lot of that in with the passion that we all have for overlanding. So let's talk a little bit about your art. So recently, you had an art exhibit in Mexico City. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was my first gallery show, and it all came about because in the early days of the pandemic, I take that back. It wasn't the early days of the pandemic. It was after, we're into the pandemic.
Sure.
And I was driving back and forth from Colorado to LA to see my son.
Sure.
And I never take the same route, and I'm always, kind of looking for something new. And I started coming across, I'd always kind of blown through it, but these areas of, there's the salt mines, the borax mines, these different topographies. And this one time I just kind of threw up the drone, I was bored, threw up the drone and, looking down.
Yeah, it's such a different perspective.
Yeah, it looked like a medical cross-section of epidermis.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I was just kind of going, why is it purple and red and green and all this stuff? And it, it made me kind of take into consideration, the one in particular was a borax mine where they pumped water underground to get rid of it, basically. But then they'd pumped so much that it had created its own volcano.
Oh, wow.
And that's why we got all these crazy colors of copper and purple and whatnot. And it made me just kind of think of, why we were, kind of doing this. Like, what benefit is this? And, we're in a constant state of evolution on this planet, for better or worse. I'm not
things are always changing.
Things are always changing. And I'm not, smart enough to decide whether it's better or worse. It's, everything's for now, and so it made me kind of go on this mission whenever it gave me a purpose beyond just going home or going to see my son, to seek out these landscapes that were in a state of change, that were maybe being changed quicker because of the mining operations and, whatever, but they were beautiful.
Sure.
And I just wanted to shoot them.
Yeah.
To do it. So we had this gallery show at my gallery in Mexico City called Loot, and the photos
How do you spell that?
LOOT.
Got it.
And I believe the website's LOOT.mx.
Got it.
And the photos I printed them there, and we did them 6 feet wide, just huge, and it was a great experience to have my first gallery show there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, really
those photos were beautiful, and they were in Overland Journal not that long ago.
Yeah, that's right.
In
it
the latitude
it was a
section.
full latitude section, yeah, which was very cool.
And then can people see a few of those images on your website?
They're not on my website, but let's put a gallery up so we can have it in the show notes.
We'll put a couple
yeah.
examples so people
Yeah,
can kind of see what, because they are super impressive. Yeah, just such an interesting way to look at humans' impact on the environment. When I shoot the environment, I always think about the big, beautiful mountain or the carved canyon or the erosion or something like that. But to also capture those other influences is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know if it's good or bad because
it just is. It's what it is.
The salt and the borax, they're natural.
Sure.
You know, and it's just the way that they develop it, I suppose.
And then you did, I mean, it's something that people got to check out. We'll put it in the show notes as well because it's so great. But you did this project with Hodinkee where you were in Costa Rica or Panama. Where were you at? Where you were shooting all that with the motorcycle and the airplane? And
yeah, we did my friend Gray reached out to me, and Gray, I'd met him in Portugal quite a few years back, and he reached out to me about doing a project with Hamilton and Hodinkee.
Right.
Hamilton is a great
yeah,
watchmaker,
for sure.
and they've done really amazing.
They have excellent field watches.
Yeah,
like
field
really
watches,
practical, well-made.
Exactly. And
field watches.
wanted to know if I wanted to do a project with them. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we went to my friend's place in Zihuatanejo called Musa, the Modern Utopian Society of Adventurers, and it's an incredible place south of Zihuatanejo, and as far as location to film and ride motorcycles and fly airplanes and drive Jeeps.
Sure.
You know, it was really fun. And, you know, we were there during the rainy season. It was right smack dab July, but we lucked out with great weather where we were able to, my friend Jonathan, who's Canadian, lives in Mexico City, has this incredible plane, and we flew in from Mexico City and then, you know, shot on the beach with motorcycles and planes.
Yeah, that one shot of you on a dirt bike with the plane coming in behind you. I mean, that was like right out of a James Bond film. I'm like, my friend is really freaking cool.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know, I have to say
it's so good.
It's great.
It's really fun.
I have to say that I have a friend, Victoria Casanova, who lives in Zihuatanejo and Los Angeles. And we were down in Musa, and she was the one that said, I really want to get a small plane down here. And she was just learning how to ride a motorcycle. And she was like, how cool would it be to be just riding down the beach and a plane come flying by you? You know, and that was kind of the idea with having Jonathan down there.
It looks
really fun.
It's super cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really
it's
fun.
So well shot. It literally looks like it's right out of a James Bond film.
Yeah, it was really fun, and that's that's part of the fun of, you know, where I am in my career now is the advertising and commercial world is realize that there's a real value in the authenticity of telling these stories. You know, and going out and having fun with it, not trying to create some hokey, you know, bourgeois thing.
It didn't look hokey. It looked cool as hell.
All right.
Yeah, nice work on that. So we got a little bit more time, but we got to talk about one of the more interesting things that's new as far as gear and stuff for you is you've pretty much been a Land Rover guy since your first Discovery 1 manual transmission truck, and you recently bought a new vehicle. So let's talk about how you went from Range Rover Mark III that had been serving you well to what you're driving now.
So I think to get to where we are now, we need to back up a little bit.
Let's do it. Let's back up as far as you want.
What year was that we did Speed Channel? Was that 2008, 2009?
I think it probably was.
Yeah,
2008, 2009.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And
was it the Deadliest Roads or something like that?
Something like that. It was ridiculous.
Dangerous Drives.
Dangerous Drives. And so you'd contacted me about putting a route together for those guys. And, you know, we went to Moab in November, and it snowed 30 inches.
Nuked.
Yeah, just nuked. And I met Dave Harrington, you know, for the first time. And Dave is the founder of AEV, and he had a Brute there and a couple of of Jeeps. I don't
Yeah,
know,
JKs.
JKs.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
With their kit on it.
just built. I
Yeah,
mean,
super
built.
sweet.
And I had my Discovery, and we did this trip, and by the end of the trip, I was missing a headlight out of the Discovery, but it kept up with the AEVs.
Even in that really deep snow, I remember
yeah.
you're looking at me like, Scott, there's no way. And I'm like, we're just going to keep airing down until there's almost no air left in the tire. And it worked.
It worked. And we got through. And I've always, Dave is such a great guy. He's so smart. He's such a talented designer, businessman.
Yeah, he's just awesome, dude.
Just a great guy. And I'd always appreciated his product.
Sure.
The way he does it. But I've never really strayed from Land Rover for whatever reason. And Dave has been very generous with letting me drive a Brute, letting me drive, JKs. Whenever I needed a truck, he'd let me drive it.
It was the gateway drugs.
It was the gateway. Yeah, I know. He was like, give it to him for free, then he'll buy. He was using a little bit of that hood economics.
No dummy.
Which is pretty good for a Montana boy. So
both of you.
Yeah, fast forward to, I've recently started using, first it was a Ford Ranger that TJM out of Australia had built, and I used that with my son on a spring break trip, and I really liked the platform of a truck with a rack on it and the rooftop tent on top.
Sure.
And if anybody that knows me knows, like, I'm not a fan of rooftop tents.
Right.
I've never have been. I hate finding a flat parking spot. Generally, I'll sleep outside, cowboy camp. Not into it. My son, however, loves them.
Yeah, they're tree forts.
It's a tree fort. They
transform. They kind of pop up. Yeah, it's like all the things.
He's into it. And like, basically what I've learned ever since having a kid is I've lived my life. Now I'm going to do everything I can to make his life as awesome as it can be.
As meaningful as it can be. Yeah.
Exactly. So we had this trip, had the rooftop tent. He really loved it. I started thinking about that platform. And this was probably 4 years ago.
It was a pickup truck you were in. Ranger?
It was a Ranger. Yeah. It was a Ford Ranger.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago.
Great truck. A really great truck. And the TJM stuff was, the way they had it was very thoughtfully built out. And it was kind of on the back of my mind. And then I did, the Camp Yoshi project. Yeah. And I had the Gladiator Way Out, their concept vehicle that Scott Brown sent me. Same deal, rooftop tent
on the back,
platform on the back. Had the decked system in the back, and it's kind of percolating. So I started thinking, like, what is it that I need out of a truck? And the problem with both the Ford Ranger and the Gladiator was the range, the gas mileage. Yeah. I couldn't fathom driving either of those because,
you get too remote.
Yeah, I just
and you
don't.
Have long trips.
I have long trips. I don't like carrying fuel. I don't, it's like I try and keep it as simple as possible. And in a conversation with Dave Harrington, he was like, "Have you checked out the diesel, the Duramax, Colorado?" He didn't even mention AEV. He was like, Bison. I didn't know about the Bison. But I checked it out, and it kind of checked a lot of boxes. And then
it was our mid-size truck of the year a few years ago.
Right. Yeah. So the Bison, the way that Dave has outfitted it and designed it, really worked. So late last year, I picked one up because they're not making the diesel anymore. And it's really gonna serve the purpose, I think.
Sure.
And as far as what I'm
you said you were getting mid 20 mile per gallon. Over 500 mile range in the tank.
Yeah, over 500 mile range. Yeah. 24 to 26 miles to the gallon.
Sure.
I've done it's been winter, and we've had a heck of a winter, as we all know. There hasn't been a lot of opportunity, but I've done some stuff in and around Utah, and it still gets high teens off road, which I'll take all day long. Sure. So yeah, it's I'm really excited. We've been here in Prescott the last few days, kind of figuring things out with
like
it.
kind of stage one.
Yeah, stage one, and super minimal. I don't need a lot, you know. I really liked the deck system that I found on the Gladiator. The fact that you can have that organized storage that's secure and waterproof. I also came across the I believe it's Lightner rack system. And, you know, I vacillated a lot on whether I wanted to go with a camper top, like a Super Pacific or a GFC or an AT Overland. And the thing that kind of kept me with the rooftop tent system is I've never dealt with a camper system that didn't keep dust out.
Sure.
So if I know I'm gonna get dust in there, like I might as well just let it fly, and you know, I don't know. It may change down the road.
For sure. And the configuration you've got now, you still have a truck.
Yeah, I still have a truck.
You can haul motorcycles around. You can go to, you can use it as a truck. You can go to Home Depot. You can haul your motorcycle. You can, bring home a new washer and dryer. Like you can use a truck as a truck, which I think is kind of nice. So I do like that a little more open bed configuration.
Exactly. And this is new to me. I've always been in, a fully enclosed SUV.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to let it kind of evolve. I'm not, I'm going to keep it very, because part of what I've learned over the years is the more complicated the systems get, the more chance you have to fix it in the field.
Or just be distracted from the reason why you're going out, which
exactly.
is to go see nature and
spend time with my kid.
Yeah,
is what it's about. And I don't want to, as much fun as he has sorting bolts, I don't want to be doing that in the middle of nowhere.
And then you put a tent on top of it.
Yeah, I did put a tent on top of it. An
Alu-cab.
Alu-cab. Yeah. It's an Alu-cab. To me, I had my choice of quite a few, and looking at the Alu-cab, it was the most durable. And
it looks bomber.
Yeah, it looks bomber, and I've heard nothing but good things about them. Again,
and it has the ability to run some accessory rails on top, so you could put your mountain bikes up there or strap some, firewood,
kayaks, like whatever kind of weird sport I want to do. No, I could but I don't want to go any higher than it already is.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to be pretty minimal.
Sure.
But the Alu-cab, to me, like it's one of the beefiest.
It is for sure
ones out there, and I tend to. Again, one of the reasons, and I didn't touch on this earlier, is one of the reasons I never even looked at full size. I did look at the Power Wagon for a bit. And once I drove the Power Wagon, it was way too big for it's an incredible vehicle, but way too big for the places I like to go.
And back to the fuel economy.
Yeah, and the fuel economy. Yeah. So this mid-size diesel.
This truck gets twice the fuel economy of a Power Wagon.
Yeah, exactly. So this mid-size really knocks it out of the park for me. And being, small and compact, and having the Alu-cab being as beefy as it is, it's not going to get torn up by branches or anything and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you've got looks like a ZR2 Bison, gives you rear locker, front locker, Multimatic suspensions, got a bunch of AEV goodies on it, AEV bumper. You're getting ready to put a winch on it.
Yep.
You're going to be ready because you always do so much solo travel that you need to be very self-sufficient, including getting unstuck.
Yep. I mean, it's interesting because Caleb from Adventure Imports has been helping me with this truck over the last few days, and he was lamenting that he can't find people to go out with.
Sure.
And I was like, just go by yourself. Yeah. Don't ever let that hold you back, and you're going to realize that going by yourself, you don't have to worry about anybody else's agenda. You don't have to worry about how anybody else feels. You just go out.
And you get to learn a lot about yourself,
too.
Yeah,
exactly. And for me, I don't want to, my schedule's so wonky with my career and my son. And if I have the opportunity to get out there, I want to be out there, and I want to be self-sufficient. Yeah. And having a winch is definitely one of those things that gives you the confidence that
it makes so much sense.
I can get out of here.
And you like to really go into rugged, remote places. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the truck looks great. We'll throw a photo up, and you're just getting started. It's going to be featured in Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, and we'll end up doing a wrap-up video. We'll do a bunch of great things on it so people can follow along with your new project. Pretty amazing that you strayed from Land Rover, but if you're going to do it, that's the vehicle to do it with. A diesel mid-size truck. Yeah, awesome. AEV.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the fact that someone of Dave from AEV's caliber has given it its blessing.
Sure.
There's not a whole lot of other people in this space that I respect as much as Dave. So.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one to go with.
Yep.
Sinuhe, thanks so much. Let's talk about how people find out more about you. What's your social media, your website? How do people follow you and engage with your content?
Yeah, so Instagram is Sinuhe Xavier. All of my socials are Sinuhe Xavier. My website, Sinuhe Xavier. Type in my name. You can, Google me, whatever it takes. I'm out there.
Yeah. Well, it's been so fun to have you on. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Anything that you'd like to share with the audience, or some recent insights or things that you've learned that you wanted to share?
Not really. I've had such a great time over the last couple of years coming out of the pandemic and getting back to just letting the universe suggest.
Sure.
Lay its suggestions out and being in tune to those suggestions and following them around.
Yeah.
Like ending up as kind of everything we talked about.
Yeah.
The Camp Yoshi thing was a little suggestion. The trip through Central America was a little suggestion. And, being open to that stuff and not being locked into what I think is the path.
Yeah. You've been saying yes to the hell yeses and a lot of no's to other things.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Good. That's good. So anyway, it's always such a joy to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being a great friend and for bouncing around the world with me all these years. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast. And we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.